Wichita's first gravestone dealer, Christian Kimmerle. German immigrant Christian Kimmerle established Wichita's first gravestone business in 1875 under the name Wichita Marble Works. Christian and his wife Pauline were among the first to settle in Wichita, and both left behind a lasting legacy.
Christian Kimmerle was a member of the International Order of Oddfellows, and in this photo he is wearing his regalia, a floral tasseled collar fastened with a 3-link chain and ceremonial dress cap.
Christian and Pauline Kimmerle. Christian Kimmerle was born in Baden-Württemberg, Germany in 1845 and came to America in 1860. Pauline Gertner was born in Stockheim, Germany in 1852 and arrived in America in 1868. By 1870, 25-year-old Christian Kimmerle and his new bride Pauline were living in Topeka. According to Pauline, the couple came to Wichita in July of 1870, 1 month after this census was taken that recorded Christian's occupation as saloon keeper.
The 1870 census shows Christian saloon keeper and Pauline in Topeka. Pauline remembered Christian working on the construction of the Kansas State House when they lived there.
Life in early Wichita. According to Pauline's memory, she and Christian came to Wichita in the summer of 1870 on the suggestion of William Gravestone, who provided them with free land to build a home. The many hardships they endured in their shack on the prairie in the early days ranged from scares of Indian raids to the complete absence of eggs in a community that had not yet acquired chickens.
Their first house was a shack on lots on North Main Street provided by William Gravestone. Mrs. Kimmerle said the house was terrible. The weather blew into it on all sides, the slightest rain threatening to ruin everything inside. The dining table was a dry goods box and seats cracker boxes. The Kimmerles had a stove but could find no stovepipe. Mike Zimmerle, first tinner, not yet having arrived. Pauline Kimmerle found a family named Gus's over on Waco Avenue with a fully equipped kitchen stove, and she actually went over there, cooked the Kimmerle meals, and carried them home. The Kimmerles eventually abandoned the Main Street house and built on North Market. This home was the first one plastered in Wichita, and the brick chimney Mr. Kimmerle erected was the first one here. This was the Kimmerle home on North Market, the first home plastered in Wichita, and the home with the first brick chimney built by Kimmerle and first dining room table in Wichita, built by Henry Bolt.
The Kimmerles eventually moved out of the North Market house, as it was close to the old calaboose, or prison. The prison had poor ventilation, and at night during the summer, the prisoners let the world know it by their wails. Pauline was one of a handful of early Wichita pioneers who saw the town grow from just a few shacks in 1870 to over 200,000 homes, and growing by the time of her death in 1943. Many of the historical tidbits and memories of early-day Wichita that folks share today came from Pauline. Excellent beer and the freshest of lager. Christian is credited with being Wichita's first stonemason, and we know him as the first proprietor of Wichita Marble Works. But I learned while researching him that before he started his stone and marble yard, he was serving up beer, wine, and lager, not just in Topeka, but in Wichita.
Call on Chris Kimmerle at Turn Hall and try some of that excellent beer. Chris knows how to set it up. His Catawba wine is acquainted with no superior in the city. The Daily Beacon, Wichita, Kansas, September 1st, 1873. Chris Kimmerle keeps up the reputation of his well-known place by setting out to his customers the best and freshest of lager. He also supplies the public with the well-rounded Bologna, the toothsome Schweitzer Käse, and the odorous Limburger. If neither of these suit, he can turn out a Holland herring that anybody would relish. The Wichita Weekly Beacon, Wichita, Kansas, May 19, 1875.
Men could also retire for a rest at Christian's place, but on the March 1875 census, his job was mason, not saloon keeper or hotel proprietor. Victor Murdoch claimed that Kimmerle laid more stone foundations and brick chimneys than anyone in Wichita by 1875. A fine boy? The 1910 census says Pauline birthed no children, so I was surprised to find that the Wichita Daily Times reported in 1884 that a boy was born at the Kimmerle house.
Chris Kimmerle comes to the front with a smile and reports the birth of a fine boy at his house. Wichita Daily Times, Wichita, Kansas, February 7th, 1884.
I didn't find any more mentions of this boy, so either something happened to him, or this bit of news doesn't mean what I think it does. If they had a baby that died, his burial place isn't known, and he wasn't given a gravestone. Christian's career. During his career as a gravestone dealer in Wichita, Christian operated a marble and stone yard called Wichita Marble Works, where gravestones were carved and shipped out to be placed at cemeteries across Kansas and beyond. Most of Kimmerle's early work was done with a partner, Charles Adams, under the name Kimmerle and Adams. Christian was good with money. He served multiple terms as Wichita's city treasurer, and while he served, the stone and marble yard doubled as the treasurer's office. He was also the treasurer for the local Oddfellows Lodge, the Turner Society, and the German Emigrant Aid Society in Wichita. Before, during, and after running his gravestone business, Christian also maintained a farm. He did his share of threshing wheat, and he raised grapes and pears. And in addition to serving up beer and managing the Turner Opera House, I also found this fun tidbit about some unusual entertainment he provided for Wichitans.
A loose bull on North Market Street last night, wading through hedges and picket fences in all his majesty, with John Davidson and Chris Kimmerle standing guard, is one of many amusing incidents occurring almost every evening in our city. Wichita Daily Times, Wichita, Kansas, July 12, 1883.
Christian was a stonemason by trade, but investing in the growth of Wichita was probably much more profitable. He retired from the gravestone business in 1886 to become a full-time capitalist. He had been investing in real estate for years, completely embracing the manifest destiny of Wichita. The largest gravestone in central West Kansas. Christian was described as not very pious, but generous to a fault, and as a genial, whole-souled, honest man. He has gained the goodwill of everybody and the ill will of no one. Christian died in San Diego, California of esophageal cancer in 1914 at age 69. His body was returned to Wichita to be buried at Highland Cemetery. Pauline moved back to Wichita after Christian died. She lived here for another 30 years, sharing stories about the early days of Wichita until her death in 1943 at age 90. She was buried beside her husband. If you look closely at their gravestone, you can see that the numbers in Pauline's death year are a little thicker, a clue that they were added later. The gravestone was commissioned by Pauline from the Jones Brothers Monumental Granite Company in Wichita, shortly after Christian's death. It was carved from Winsboro blue granite that was shipped to Wichita from the Ryan Quarry in South Carolina. The stone features an angel, a dove, and a background of water, evoking themes of peaceful transition and divine protection, and all of it was carved here in Wichita. At the time it was placed, Christian's gravestone was said to be the largest at not just Highland Cemetery, but in central West Kansas, competing with just one other in Anthony. When shipped, the stone was 3 feet wide, stood over 7 feet tall, and weighed in at 3,000 pounds. The expertly carved stone cost Pauline $1,250 in 1915, equal to about $40,000 today. Wichita Marble Works. Christian Kimmerle founded Wichita Marble Works in 1875. At one point, his marble and stone yard was the largest of the kind west of Kansas City, and the shop took orders from as far away as California. C. Kimmerle and Company. Among the first mentions that I can find in newspapers of Wichita Marble Works is an article from 1876, when the Wichita Weekly Beacon announced that Kimmerle was opening a stone and marble yard with his brother-in-law, Charlie Herberger.
Messrs. Kimmerle and Herberger are initiating an enterprise that will undoubtedly develop into a prosperous business in the course of a few years. This firm has opened a stone and marble yard on Main Street between 1st and 2nd Streets, where they propose to do all kinds of plain and ornamental stonework, including tombstones, window and door cappings, and sills. In fact, they propose running a first-class yard. Mr. Herberger has had a large experience in the best establishments in the country, and we may look for some fine work. Success to the new enterprise, the Wichita Weekly Beacon, Wichita, Kansas, April 19, 1876.
Ads for Wichita Marble Works were in local papers that same month, with C. Kimmerle and Company as the owners. Wichita Marble Works imported stone from the East Coast and overseas, but they also used local stone from Isaac Alexander's limestone quarry near Cottonwood Falls.
Mr. E. Cooley has received an order for 3 carloads of stone from Mr. Chris Kimmerle at Wichita. The stone is to be used for tombstones and caps and sills for buildings and will be taken from Alexander's Quarry west of town. Chase County Leader, Cottonwood Falls, Kansas, April 6, 1876.
I'm not sure if the limestone was used for any actual gravestones, but it was definitely used for the bases that the gravestones were set on. One of the first gravestones that came from Kimmerle's shop was for Carlos B. King, the deputy sheriff who was shot and killed at Rowdy Joe Lowe's Hyde Park Dance House in Newton in 1871.
Chris Kimmerle is turning out some nice work from his shop. Saturday we noticed a nice tombstone, American marble, on which was inscribed the name of Carlos B. King, a brother of S. King, an attaché of this office, who was killed at Newton several years since by a Texan, while he was acting in the capacity of city marshal. The lettering and Masonic symbols on the slab was very neatly done. The Weekly Eagle, Wichita, Kansas, June 27, 1876.
The lettering and Masonic symbol on this early Kimmerle-produced gravestone are quite sharp, but it is also very plain compared to other work, is lacking accurate spacing and centering, and does not have a visible maker's mark. Dawson and Adams. Briefly, Wichita Marble Works advertisements did not include the Kimmerle name, and I'm not sure why. Charles Adams and George Dawson were the proprietors briefly in 1876 to 1877. Kimmerle and Adams. Wichita Marble Works advertisements were back under the Kimmerle name in 1877, and Christian was back in business, this time with Charles L. Adams of the aforementioned Dawson and Adams. Known as Kimmerle and Adams, the pair expertly operated Wichita Marble Works together, cranking out countless beautiful gravestones and setting them in cemeteries across Kansas and neighboring states.
Wichita Marble Works. The Wichita Marble Works, of which Messrs. Kimmerle and Adams are the proprietors, deserve more than a passing notice. They occupy a large room and yard at 60 Main Street and commenced business 8 years ago. Their storehouse and sheds are filled with monuments, tombstones, mantles, tabletops, etc., in white marble, Tennessee marble, and granite. They employ a large force of skilled carvers and stone dressers who shape the solid stone into lovely images. The firm are also dealers in lime, hair, cement, and building stone and plaster ornaments for centers, gas fixtures, and other wall ornamentation. The Wichita Weekly Beacon, Wichita, Kansas, October 10, 1883.
For 9 years, most of the gravestones produced in Wichita were produced by Christian Kimmerle and Charles Adams. The pair traveled around the Tri-County area and beyond selling their work. They also operated a shop in Newton. Adams and Koenig. By the mid-1880s, Christian had apparently had his fill of the gravestone business for one reason or another. The Wichita Eagle first reported his retirement in 1884, and the formation of a new company headed by Charles Adams called Adams and Koenig.
Our reporter called into Kimmerle and Adams' marble yard yesterday to see what was going on. In the storeroom were some beautiful Italian, Scotch, and American marble, handsomely finished and wrought in all the modern styles used in the regions of the dead. Mr. Kimmerle retired from the firm and Mr. Koenig took his place yesterday. Mr. Koenig is from Louisville, Kentucky. The firm will be known as Adams and Koenig. The Wichita Eagle, Wichita, Kansas, September 17, 1884.
But less than a month later, Adams and Coing was officially dissolved, and Christian was back in the business with Charles as Kimmerle and Adams. I'm still looking for an Adams and Coing marked gravestone. Kimmerle and Adams leave Wichita Marble Works. Christian and Charles worked together for another year and a half until 1886, when Adams sold his share of the business to Kimmerle, and then Kimmerle sold the business to his brother, John Kimmerle. The following year, John Kimmerle sold Wichita Marble Works to W.I. Tietzel. Tietzel sold the business to W.E. Marsh in 1890, and by 1900, it was in the hands of yet another owner and renamed as Wichita Marble and Granite Works. The business changed hands multiple times after that, but remained in operation until at least the 1960s. Gravestones by Kimmerle and Adams. There are many beautiful gravestones around Kansas with a Kimmerle and Adams mark, so it's hard to choose just a few to share. Here are a few of the marked gravestones they carved that I have found. Sarah Stewart, Greenwood Cemetery. This elaborate gravestone for Sarah is carved from white marble. The lettering, layout, and font choices do not immediately appear to be the work of Kimmerle and Adams to me. But this gravestone bears a Kimmerle and Adams mark, confirming it was carved at Wichita Marble Works under their proprietorship. Ross Family Monument, Highland Cemetery, Wichita. This large pedestal-style monument at Highland Cemetery in Wichita was commissioned by Wichita Mayor Finlay Ross after his wife Sarah died in 1879. The gravestone bears the mark of Kimmerle and Adams. Note the stylization of the ampersand that could signify a specific carver. Leva Coulter, Fowler Cemetery, Butler County. Little Leva at rural Fowler Cemetery in Butler County has a simple tablet stone with a carving of a lamb, and it also has a flower at the very top. The gravestone bears the mark of Kimmerle and Adams, stylized as K&A, and it has the same fancy ampersand as the Ross Monument, perhaps indicating the same carver. George Stroop, Waco Cemetery, Hayesville. George's gravestone at Waco Cemetery has stood the test of time, and the Kimmerle and Adams mark is clearly visible at the bottom. This one also has the fancy ampersand. Grave of Lynn Wyckoff, Wichita. There is a single gravestone in the parking lot at Cessna in West Wichita, and it's for little Lynn Wyckoff. The gravestone bears the stylized K&A mark without the fancy ampersand. Schuster Family Monument, Greenwood Cemetery, Newton. When we spotted this unique stone, we suspected it was carved by Kimmerle and Adams, just based on the style and layout of the lettering. A closer inspection confirmed a Kimmerle and Adams mark on this stone. Llewellyn Children, Belle Vista Cemetery, El Dorado. 2 children of Dr. Llewellyn were buried on his farm in Butler County, and then later reinterred at Belle Vista Cemetery in El Dorado. The children died in 1858 and 1868, but this gravestone wasn't carved until at least 1877. The mark of Kimmerle and Adams, stylized as K&A, is barely visible at the bottom. Minnie Forney, Belle Plaine Cemetery, Belle Plaine. Minnie's gravestone has a very Kimmerle and Adams look. Something about the outline name and the banner that frames it, the font choices, and the shape and style of the lettering all seem to be the Kimmerle and Adams carving style. Nothing is traditional about this Kimmerle and Adams mark, however. This is the fanciest Kimmerle and Adams mark that I have found. Hamilton Children, Pleasant Hill Cemetery, Cheney. There are several Kimmerle and Adams gravestones at Pleasant Hill Cemetery near Cheney Reservoir, including this double gravestone for twins William and Margaret Hamilton that features mirrored lambs. The gravestone bears the mark of Kimmerle and Adams with a regular ampersand. Watkins Children, Seltzer Cemetery, Wichita. 2 children of Elizabeth and William Watkins, Daniel Watkins, and an unnamed infant, have Kimmerle and Adams gravestones at Seltzer Cemetery. The infant's stone was broken and reset, but the lamb on it is identical to one of the lambs on the gravestone of the Hamilton twins above. The Kimmerle and Adams mark is visible on Daniel's gravestone. These gravestones also have emphasis added beneath the death date, a detail seen on many Kimmerle and Adams stones from this time frame. Nina Kendall, Maple Grove Cemetery, Wichita. Nina was originally buried at Highland Cemetery, but she was reinterred at Maple Grove Cemetery, which opened after Kimmerle and Adams were out of business. Her name features the outline-style carving that can be found on many Kimmerle and Adams gravestones. It also bears a Kimmerle and Adams mark below the family name. Margaret Wolfe, Pioneer Cemetery, Cheney. Margaret's gravestone almost looks like some kind of weird printing error, but closer inspection reveals that it was definitely an artistic choice made by the carver. I can see what the artist was going for here, but there is probably a reason why I haven't seen another Kimmerle and Adams stone like this. This stone bears the Kimmerle and Adams mark. Fanny Rollins, Wichita Sedgwick County Historical Museum. Fanny M. Rollins is buried at Pleasant Ridge Cemetery in Goddard, but her gravestone is at the Wichita Sedgwick County Historical Museum. The gravestone was stolen from the cemetery in the 90s, and when found, it was turned over to Maple Grove Cemetery. It was later given to the museum for a display on funerary artifacts. Her actual grave remains unmarked. The gravestone bears the mark of Kimmerle and Adams, and because it is preserved in the museum, it will remain in this condition. Kate Orr Haas, Maple Grove Cemetery, Valley Center. There are several Kimmerle and Adams stones at Maple Grove Cemetery in Valley Center, including this one for Kate, who died of pneumonia. This gravestone displays the typical Kimmerle and Adams style, but also has some expertly carved tassels and designs decorating the face. The stone has the Kimmerle and Adams mark. So what happened to Charles Adams? Charles Adams was born in West Virginia and came to Kansas around 1876. He was just 20 years old when he went into a partnership with Christian Kimmerle, suggesting that he was highly skilled and trustworthy at a young age. Charles married Mamie Bunsen in Wichita in 1880. The couple had 2 children, Grace, born 1882, and Charles, born 1889. After Kimmerle left Wichita Marble Works, Charles followed in his footsteps in more ways than one. He left the business for a while too, and also served as Wichita's treasurer for a few years in the 1880s, and then ran for Sedgwick County treasurer in 1889. The 1895 census has his occupation as police clerk, and he also joined the military in 1898, 1st U.S. Volunteer Infantry, Company C, and was discharged later that same year. His wife Mamie died in 1899 and was buried at Highland Cemetery. Charles got back into the stone and marble business after Mamie died. The 1900 census says Charles was working as a marble dealer in Oklahoma City. He was one of the proprietors of Southwestern Granite and Marble Works for a few years, and the 1910 census says he was a marble cutter in Great Bend. When he died, his occupation was listed as laborer. Charles died in 1926 in the Veterans Home in Leavenworth. He was just 68, but was struggling with heart disease and mental insufficiency. His daughter Grace was listed as his nearest relative, and she had his body returned to Wichita to be buried next to Mamie. After running at least 2 gravestone carving businesses in 2 different states, and artfully carving countless gravestones throughout his life for friends and strangers, Charles was buried in an unmarked grave. He's buried directly across the cemetery road from Christian and Pauline Kimmerle. His children, Grace and Charles, ultimately ended up in California. Grace had been married once, but I don't believe she had any children, and her husband died in 1925. After that, she lived with her brother until he died in 1956, and I believe he was cremated. He was also widowed, and I don't believe he had children either. Grace died in 1967, and she was cremated.